for this, and I know there's probably a lot of
one thing that did really, really well about you is that I taken time out of an insane film.
I get a chance to catch up with an old friend during this episode of Unbeatable. Bobby Cox and I started serving together in the same units in the military back to back for several years. And I got a chance to know him and know his family. And I watched this Army officer's career take off like a rocket ship. And where it ends up today is going to impress you. It's going to surprise you. But during this episode, Bobby says that there was one piece of advice, one very simple piece of advice, his first job in the Army that has stayed with him and made him wildly successful in almost everything that he's done today. You got to hang in there to hear this one piece of advice from my friend, Congressman Bobby Cox, on this episode of Unbeatable. Before we get into the interview with Bobby, I want to just say thank you to the folks at the Solomon Foundation for being the sponsor for this episode. If you're looking for something to do with your money that will give you an excellent return on your money, but also make an eternal impact, just go check these folks out at the Solomon Foundation. Go take a look at thesolomonfoundation.org. Now here's my conversation with my friend, now Congressman, Bobby Cox.
These stories of triumph over adversity will help you handle your toughest days in life and become unbeatable.
Hey, Congressman Bobby Cox, thank you for taking a few minutes out of your schedule to do this interview with me today.
Hey, it's great to be here. When one of your heroes asks you to be on a podcast, you gotta answer the call. It's great to see you, Jeff.
I think it actually works the other way around. I'm getting the chance to interview a guy who I would consider a hero. I love the fact that I get a chance to call you as a friend, Congressman Cox, because you and I have talked about this more than a time or two. So I'm gonna start where you are today, and then what I want to do with the listeners is go back in time a little bit. Let's talk about when you and I first met. And just to honor that, by the way, I'm wearing the shirt from 2nd Ranger Battalion when we first met way out in the Pacific Northwest, early in the war on terrorism. And we had a chance to serve together. That was not long. Well, it was your second assignment after graduating from the Citadel. Is that right?
That's right. Yeah. So graduated ROTC from the Citadel. My senior years when 9/11 happened, so that really solidified my desire to go into the Army and do my part, and was able to go to the 101st Airborne Division as a platoon leader, which was a great first assignment to grow up, and then got picked up to go to 2nd Ranger Battalion, which was just a fantastic opportunity and, an incredible unit, and set the foundation for really my success and career, therefore, and here we are now.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And I got to meet you, of course.
Well, no, it's the other way around. You and I got a chance to work together a lot in 2nd Ranger Battalion because this was a period of time when that unit was gone all over the world, almost continuously. Neither one of us got a chance to spend a lot of time with our families during that assignment.
It was, and that's totally true, but you really felt like, the missions you were doing, you could see the strategic impact. And just I really felt like that's where God wanted us to be at that time, and it was very fulfilling. And like I said, we took those lessons learned and went out back into the Army, and it's an incredible time, high adventure, and you just learned a lot about yourself. It was great.
Yeah, absolutely.
So.
I know you're not going to brag about yourself, so I'm going to do a little bit of bragging about you. You didn't just graduate from the Citadel. I think if I remember correctly, I know where your class rank was. Where did you rank when you graduated from the Citadel?
Well, so, it's a cadet system, so it's a regiment, and so each year you get the opportunity to, try out different leadership opportunities. It's a leadership laboratory, especially on a college level. And I was able just to continue to rise through the cadet ranks. And my senior year, I was the regimental commander, which is,
a pretty big deal for
commander.
Anybody who doesn't know what he's talking about right now.
Yeah. So it was a fantastic opportunity, a humbling opportunity to, as a senior in college, to have that experience, to be over 2,000 of your peers. And then during that formative time, like I said, of 9/11, to lead the school and to try to motivate people, keep everyone together. It was a time that I would not trade, and I really value it now looking back.
Yeah.
It was just an incredible opportunity. Yeah.
There's some people listening that don't remember what life was like before September 11th, 2001. You do, I do, because you joined the Citadel before the global war on terrorism. And honestly, you're South Carolina born and bred through and through. The Citadel makes sense, but there was nothing really pulling people into the military before September 11th. So what was it that caused you to say, hey, I think I want to try ROTC at the Citadel? Why the U.S. Army?
So my family is kind of a military family. My dad was a helicopter pilot in Vietnam. He flew Hueys. My uncle was an airborne ranger. He was a company commander in Vietnam with 101st. And so I grew up hearing their stories. My great-grandfather, or my grandfathers were in World War II. One was a glider pilot, one served with Patton. So it was just one of those, kind of family business aspect. And so they were feeding me stories, and I was like, man, this is something that's bigger than yourself, give you a purpose. So I want to go to the Citadel. I didn't know I really wanted to go in, but I went to the Citadel to test that desire and to grow and to challenge myself. And like I said, when 9/11 happened, it was like, this is something I have to do, like so many other people, out there during that time. I had to go in because I knew good men and women were going overseas in harm's way, and I wanted to stand with them and lead them if given the opportunity, which I was able to, which is a great honor. So.
Well, what you just described, for people that don't know recent military history, you just described the who's who of the military, the 101st in Vietnam, the gliders in Europe, Patton's Third Army. Man, if your family comes from that kind of stock, that's kind of military royalty in the U.S. military. No wonder you would end up being, very successful in a highly elite, very, very competitive job at 2nd Ranger Battalion. And you handled it extremely well, man. I got a chance to watch you in training and watch your platoon on the battlefield, and wow, I was impressed with you as a leader.
Thank you. Yeah, it was, like I said, I always wanted, being a South Carolina guy, like you said, I always wanted to go in the Ranger Regiment, but I wanted to go to 2nd Battalion because it was out in the Northwest. I'd never been there. It just worked out with the timing and the assignments that it was just a great opportunity. Yeah. So it was fantastic.
Bobby, you left 2nd Ranger Battalion and then went to the opposite corner of the United States, to the southeast corner of the U.S., to what is now known as Fort Moore, Georgia. And here's the deal, man. I just shamelessly followed you on one side of the country to the other, and followed you to Ranger School in Fort Moore, Georgia, where you and I had a chance to work a little bit, and I had a chance to watch you teach the future generation of leaders in the U.S. military. Describe life in Georgia for a little bit.
Yeah, so my wife's from Atlanta. She's a Georgia peach, so we've always wanted to, we were drawn to, Benny at the time, now Moore, Fort Moore. And so being from a Citadel background, I really wanted to kind of, teach at Ranger School, kind of give back. And so we went to the basic, or the captain's career course, and there were some slots available to be, a platoon trainer at Ranger School. And I said, let's do this. Let's do this for a couple of years, have some good training time. Because we've been, like you said, we've been deployed nonstop for the last, So it was a great opportunity to kind of have some family time, but also train and still give back. And so it was fantastic. I took all the lessons learned from the Citadel, all the pain that I got, and was able to give it to the Ranger students to motivate them. And, but during that time, you got to do some incredible schools. Like we had Jump Master, we had Pathfinder. Could have gone to scuba if you wanted to, compete in Best Ranger. So you got to see the premier, units come through there and train, and the faces of the future leaders of the Army, and really the DoD that would come through there, and just have a little part in it, to influence that. So that was an awarding assignment, which really opened up a lot of opportunities down the road. But man, that was just a good time. And some great churches down there. You got to spend some time with worshiping. So all in all, it was just a great
Yeah,
assignment. I went straight
I
in
just wanted
again.
the listeners to know, I shamelessly followed you and Jocelyn, your wife, from the Pacific Northwest
Yeah,
down to the southeast part of the United States, just because I love serving with you, man, and had a chance to
yeah,
serve with
yeah.
you in 2 units, almost back to back.
That's right.
Um,
That's right. Yeah.
After that, you go on to the 82nd Airborne Division and spend some time there. So let's talk about North Carolina.
So, I've always wanted to command an airborne company. That was kind of my desire when I went into the, one, to go to the Ranger Regiment, and two, to command an airborne company. And I didn't really know what I was going to do after that. And so from Fort Benning, Fort Moore now, you have a little bit of opportunity to kind of influence where you go for assignment wise. So that was one of the benefits of teaching at Ranger School as well. And they had Alaska open, and they had Fort Bragg open. And so I knew I was going to deploy wherever. I really wanted to go to Alaska, but I was like, I'm not going to be in Alaska. Jocelyn's going to be in
Right.
Alaska. So why don't I pick an assignment that's close to family, since we're from South Carolina, she's from Georgia. So why not, you can't turn down the opportunity to go serve in the 82nd as a company commander. So showed up there as I'm thinking I'm Ranger qualified, jump master, pathfinder. I'm going straight into a company. And then my brigade commander is like, oh, you're pretty qualified. You're going to be our brigade S3 Air for the first year, So of course, it's, as a raring to go, captain, I'm like, but just the ability to see the entire brigade and all the battalions and help them out with air movement and planning jumps, that was really something that really benefited my jump master knowledge, but also leadership ability in the airborne, division. And so we deployed, of course, to Iraq, and then took a company downrange there, first Alpha Company, first to the 505th, and it was just an incredible unit. I mean, it was already a high performing unit, and all I had to do was just manage the talent and keep that high performance going. And we were highest reenlistment. We were just a cool company to be a part of. The culture there was just great. And it's just, being a successful company commander in 82nd was a premier highlight, especially downrange was amazing. So that was a great assignment.
For everybody who's watching this on YouTube, they can see on the wall behind you the kind of one of the highlights of your career. Move your head to the left or to the right just a little bit so that they can see that entire company guide on. Yeah, it's great.
Yep.
And what you just listed, really, from the 101st Airborne in Kentucky to 2nd Ranger Battalion to Ranger School to now the 82nd Airborne Division in North Carolina, man, this is as high honors. This is as challenging and also as rewarding of an assignment that anyone's going to get in the military. You get a chance to get a lot of them, man. I'm trying to set up for the listener right now, like, this guy has it all going on. And he's really had it all going on. He's been really, really talented and had a lot going for him since long before you started as a cadet at the Citadel. But man, by this point in your career, there is no limit. And I'm not exaggerating right now. There is no limit to where you can go next. So would you talk us through the decision that you make to take the next assignment? Because you take a turn that most guys would not take and do something very different next. Talk about what happens after commanding that company in North Carolina.
So you're talking about Capitol Hill, or
why Washington, D.C.? Why Capitol Hill? What were you thinking, Bobby, is really what I want people to hear.
Yeah. So, there's so many credible opportunities in the Army. I mean, we have all these fellowship programs and incredible units to serve in. And so when I was downrange with the 82nd, I just started to research things of what should I do next? Like, what's another challenge for myself? Should I go get an MBA or go to law school or continue down, the infantry officer track with, going back to regiment or trying out for another special, mission unit or something. And so I came upon this Army message that was sent out, and he's like, hey, fellowship opportunities available. I said, hey, what is this? And they were incredible pathways. One was Harvard, one was Georgetown, but the one that really resonated to me was you could go get a master's at George Washington and then serve on Capitol Hill as an actual staffer for a congressman or senator. And for some reason, I had always had this desire to kind of look at the political world, kind of be interested in that. It was something I was potentially may do down the road. But I said, hey, this just like the Citadel, this is an opportunity to test it out and see, what happens in the halls of government at Capitol Hill, and try to help out. So I applied, and they pick about 20 every year, so it's very selective. And I got picked up to do it, and it was just it was great. So. And honestly, you get to wear civilian clothes for like 3 years.
Even
so
better, right? You don't have to wear that uniform on Capitol Hill.
Yeah, that's right. So it's but yeah, I mean, so you go get a master's essentially in political science. So you learn how the Capitol Hill works, and then you get assigned, like I said, to either House or Senate. And for some reason, I really lobbied to try to get on the Senate side, and I was able to get into a Georgia senator, Saxby Chambliss at the time, who was heavy in defense, heavy, foreign relations, right down, heavy intelligence committee. So right down in what I was really interested in, And so this, as an Army major at the time, the access and the influence that you got to see go on was very eye-opening.
Yeah.
I mean, we saw world leaders come through there. I would take people on trips. I got to meet Benjamin Netanyahu personally, all these different people as an Army major. And so you just got to see how Congress and Senate worked, and it just really opened up my eyes to an entire different world that I was not used to as a company commander in the 82nd, So it was very, very maturing for me, very, very eye-opening. So it was a good assignment.
I want everybody to hear, it's almost impossible to exaggerate too much how highly competitive this would have been. And there's no question that if I were the guy making the decision about who I'm going to choose, one of those 20 would be you, just because of your background. And I mean, like, look at all that this guy has accomplished in the Army at this point in his career. Bobby, I'm convinced, had you stayed on active duty as an infantry officer doing those kind of normal pathways that you just described, there's no limit to how high you would have risen in the military. So when you make the decision to go to Washington, D.C., George Washington University, do a degree and work for Senator Chambliss, man, wow. That was a very, very different path than most of your peers would have taken. And this is probably a good time to talk about how amazing Jocelyn is, because I've had a chance to know you guys for a long, long time. I think she's an amazing woman, but she's been loyal, and she's been helpful, and she's been right by your side through all of these Army careers, as well as the hard work that you're doing right now, both in politics and in the business world. So tell everybody how amazing Jocelyn and your children are.
So I do a lot of public speaking now, and I always make the effort to recognize Jocelyn and my family, because I would not be here without her. I mean that's the thing. When I got promoted to captain, I thanked everybody, everyone in the formation, everyone, and I totally forgot Jocelyn. And so I was like, that was never going to happen again, So anytime I get the opportunity to praise her, it's great. So we dated when we were in college. And so she's been there from cadet days, training, all the deployments, all the moves, and even now as we enter into a new stage of service, in politics now, she's been there the whole time, and she's so supportive, a godly woman. I mean, just the definition of just a credible helper, and and of course, as most wives, she's smarter than me. She could probably be more successful than me, but she does what I'm able to do what I do because of her. She's just amazing. So yeah, for sure.
I always take the time to thank a veteran service member for their service to the country. Bobby, I have the greatest respect for you, man. Thank you. But for Jocelyn, having the chance to get to know you guys personally, see you guys, as a family for years, man, I've got the utmost respect for her too. And everything that you said about her is absolutely true. Please remind her how thankful I am for her sacrifices that she's made, incredible sacrifices for our country, not just for you and for the military, but for our country as a whole.
Yeah, I will. I'll definitely pass that along to her. And she would have been okay staying in for 30 years. I mean, she loved being an Army wife and, loved the community and everything. So, but we're still serving in a
Yeah.
different way,
Yeah.
which is great. So,
So at a point that the last time that we had a chance to sit down and spend some time together, me, you, and Jocelyn, I think I met you guys in DC. You were currently working that fellowship job, which is a dream come true for most people that have any interest in politics. And then the part of this episode that I really want to focus on for a few minutes is you guys made a very, very courageous decision. Look, man, I could talk about your career in the Army. I could talk about your courage on the battlefield for hours. But there's something that you guys decided that, frankly, many couples in your position would have said, you know what? There's just too many unknowns. It's way too scary. Let's just stick with what we know, even no matter how difficult it is. I want you to take us back to the conversations when you and Jocelyn started talking about, what about if I leave the military active duty and start to pursue a life outside of the military and start to pursue politics? Because I know, and anybody who's done that knows, but most of the listeners just don't understand how incredibly scary that conversation, that moment is.
yeah, I mean, it was very nerve wracking. I mean, it was a lot of prayer, a lot of, doubt. And, the Army was all I had ever known for my entire adult life. That was the only job, real job I had after college. You could stay in as long as you were still focused. So, I mean, you could do a career 20 years, and you know what you're doing. You're getting assignments, that kind of thing. And so, and we were enjoying it. We were, like you said, we were part of some great units, being successful. And so, but that assignment in DC opened my eyes up to other ways to serve. And so Josh and I started to think like, hey, maybe we need to get back home. Maybe there's another opportunity to serve in another way. And even those assignments are supposed to be broadening assignments. So a lot of people don't get out from them. You're supposed to, grow, mature, get a strategic, influence and exposure, and then go back to the force and take that with you. And so when I brought that up, like, hey, I'm going to transition out, even the command was cold shoulder. There was a lot of guilt there. They're like, hey, you're giving up on the Army. You have so much potential. Even it was in talks with the Ranger Regiment of going back as well. And so there was some doubt of like, am I doing the right thing? But once we got back home, the doors started to open up with opportunities, with service, with the job that I currently have, the success of elections. And so now it's like, wow, God really has set that path for us. And we went on faith, and it worked out. And so it was very nerve wracking because I was at 13 years. I mean, who gets out at 13 years,
right.
And
I know that the listeners are sitting there thinking to themselves, wait a second, man, this guy's career in the Army took off like a rocket ship, and there's no limit to where he can go. You've already proved that in some of the most difficult and demanding jobs, which means you're going to be rewarded for what you've already done for the rest of your career. And then you sit down and tell your wife, hey, listen, what if we let go of the security blanket that the United States Army has been providing for us for our entire marriage and my whole adult life? I call it the whoopee. What if we let our whoopee go and step away from the Army? Now, you're still serving, and I want everybody to know that you're still serving faithfully in the Army Reserves, part-time. But, man, the courage to say, I think I'm willing to leave an Army career at 13 years when you were already on a fast track to the top, that is no joke, man. That's really the reason why you're on this episode today. And I never got a chance to ask you this before, but I'd love to know how those conversations with Jocelyn went and her side of the conversation, because you're asking her to give up a lot to follow you and to follow this new dream that you have.
Yeah. Well, she's very supportive, and I get anxious and restless because I want to do so much and everything. So she's a calming factor of like, hey, let's actually look at the effects of
dial
this.
It back a little bit. She's the one that
dial it back.
Dial it back. Okay.
Bring it down a little bit. And so, I mean, I just went to her and I said, hey, after seeing this world that I've been a part of for the last 3 years, I was like, I think we need to go and serve somewhere else. And she trusts in my judgment if I prayed about it, if I analyzed it, looked at it, because she knows I have the best intentions of doing as much good as we can, but also taking care of the family as well. And so those aspects were there, and she said, where you go, I'll go, and vice versa. And so it was nerve wracking, but we knew one day we were going to get out of the Army. And so we're like, why not take control of our destiny now? We're at a good pivot point with the influence and the relationships we built, the exposure. This is a good time to get home, set up roots in a place that we always wanted to move back to here in Greenville, South Carolina, and go ahead and start that part of our life, because we always knew we were going to do that. And so we made that decision, and it's been great.
And
it really has.
For the listener out there, you're getting incredibly helpful advice right now. If you're sitting in this job and you've been successful, but you're just not satisfied, and you think, man, there's something else that I'd like to do, but I know what I'm getting right now, and I've been good at what I've been doing right now. And if I step into something totally new, I don't know how it's going to turn out. It may be an absolute disaster. And many people, Bobby, you already know this, when they get to that point, they just decide, you know what, I'm going to stay with what I got. Even though it's not satisfying me, I'm going to stay with what I got, because going somewhere else, doing something different when I've been this successful is really too scary. So I'm just going to stay with what I got. And I got mad respect for you and for Jocelyn for making the decision you made when you made it at the point that you were in your military career. Now, we're talking way on the other side of it, but when you were having those conversations, there were no guarantees that this wasn't going to blow up in your face, right?
I know. Oh, totally. I mean, because, and people that stay in for 20, 30 years, it's an honorable path, but sometimes you kind of know it's time to transition. And, but like you said, I'd never had a real job, outside of the Army. And so I didn't know if I was going to be successful. Would I have what it takes? I mean, because I'd been so good at this one role for so long that does that translate over? I don't even know what to do with VA things. So it's like, so I've been able to get all those lessons learned and pass them on to other people. I'll get people like, yeah, I'm transitioning out. I'm like, hey, here's what you need to look out for, because people only get out of the Army once, usually. And so you don't really get those lessons learned because they're already gone, And so I've tried to give back in that way, but I've learned, and you've probably discussed this on your show before, but there's some core principles that made me successful in the Army that I've been able to carry over into the business world, politics, everything. So, if you keep good at the basics and apply those to the roles that you're doing, a lot of times you're going to be successful as well. So that's worked out for me here in my hometown.
I hope everybody heard that, but in case they missed it, I want you to go back and tell them what you just said a second ago about how being good at the basics in the Army actually translates somewhere else, as scary as it might be. Can you mention that one more time for the person that's driving and just missed that one from you?
Yeah, no problem. I just, a lot of people ask about, what made you successful in the Army, what makes you successful now in a different phase of life. And really, it's just kind of common principles that if you master the common principles and the basics in the Army, of leadership, being a good person, values, ethics, and then you carry that over and that work ethic over into the real world outside of the Army, they translate pretty well. One of the best advice that I got when I showed up to the 101st, I reported in, talked to my company XO. And I thought he was going to give me this big speech of accountability of equipment, all this kind of stuff. He's like, hey, man, bottom line, just be a good dude here. And I'm like, well, what do you mean by that? He's like, just treat people how you want to be treated, do the right thing, have a positive attitude, and just have motivation and just do the right thing and just take care of your people. Be a good dude. And I've carried that throughout every relationship, every job. Where I come in, I'm respectful, I'm motivated, I'm happy to be there. And that has really carried over where people want to serve with people like that. whether it be in business or in the Army. So that's one of the core principles I've carried over into everything that I've done. Just be a good dude.
I just wrote down that genius piece of leadership advice that will work in literally any environment, any profession, any walk of life, for anyone, anywhere in the world. Just go be a good dude wherever you're at, whatever you're doing, and pretty much the rest of the stuff will start to take care of itself. Now, maybe you're not going to be as wildly successful as Bobby was after leaving the military, but it will never go wrong if you just be a good dude, no matter where you're at or what you're doing. So let's talk about the job at SIG Sauer, one of the biggest and one of the most well-respected gun companies in the world. Because when you said be successful, I know, but it's time for the listener to know just how successful you were after you left the military. Talk about going to work for SIG, and then describe what you're doing for them now and the level that you're leading at SIG now.
Yeah, absolutely. So during the Capitol Hill Fellowship, we would do a lot of oversight visits with congressional staff and congressional members, and you would have a certain portfolio that you would focus on. And so I was given a portfolio of Army weapons, ammunition, equipment. And so I would take these congressional trips to all the small arms facilities in the United States.
Because you maybe you know a thing or two about some of that stuff, right? Maybe you picked up a thing or two along the way. Sure, go ahead.
Exactly. So, and usually it's an infantry guy that's in that role because, like you said, they just have that experience, and, being in the regiment and 82nd, all that, is a little bit more exposure. And so I took all these trips, would take these groups of congressmen to make sure the industrial base was good and supplying our weapons to the U.S. military, ammunition as well. And so on one trip, I got to visit every single small arms manufacturer in the United States.
Wow.
Colt, Smith & Wesson, Beretta, Glock, FN, you name it, Ruger. And then finally, the last trip that we went on, the last place we visited was SIG Sauer.
That's the cherry on the top, right?
That was the cherry on the top. And there was just something about the culture there. It was almost like a special operations culture where, a third of the workforce is military. And so the lingo, the drive, the desire to serve something bigger than themselves, not taking credit for successes, it was very apparent there. And so I knew there was something different about this company. And so I just stayed in contact with them. And then I remember coming home to Jocelyn, my wife, and saying, SIG Sauer is a dream place to work. I was like, I'm going to see if I can ever work in a place like that. And we just meshed. And then, they approached me one day and they're like, hey, we're looking for a Bobby, no joke, they say, we're looking for a Bobby Cox kind of guy.
For real? They said that language to you? And they didn't mean the Atlanta Braves general manager, Bobby Cox. They were talking about Bobby Cox.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. So I'd gone to work for another great company right after the Army called Milliken. And it was a uniform company, and it's great. It's my local town here. And they came to me on one conference, SIG Sauer, and they're like, hey, we're looking for a guy like you. We're calling it the Bobby Cox role. And I said, oh, well, and they're like, would you ever be interested in coming to work for us? And after discussions, I was like, I can't turn this down. This is a dream job to go work for SIG. And that was the time right before we won the DoD pistol contract. That was before, we've gotten all these great successes. So we came in, and I was a part of this great team. Got hired by Navy SEAL. We had a Delta Force guy in there, several Ranger Regiment guys within the defense team. So like I said, I still felt like I was in the military working for this company with the culture, the drive, the team atmosphere. And then it just takes off, not because I'm there, but just because of the team that the CEO has assembled. There's just all these high performers. And it just, like right now, if my son, he wants to go into the Army, which is an honor, he's only 10, but he will be carrying a SIG, whether it be a pistol or a rifle or a machine gun here in the future. And that's all from one company. And so being a part of that makes it worthwhile being able to work for a company that has that much impact on the world and national security. It's great.
I know how incredible those guns are. I also recognize just how far you've gone in SIG, how fast you've gone that far in SIG. Wow, it's incredible. You're representing the Department of Defense, Department of State, federal law enforcement right now. Man, you're representing a lot of Capitol Hill for SIG as a vice president. And holy smokes, that is a lot of work. That's a lot of responsibility. But man, to be where you are right now at this point, it's incredible. Um, I I just had to do a little bit of research on the numbers right before we started this conversation. Just the pistol contract with Department of Defense, more than $500 million with a B, just that one contract. We're not talking about the rest of the big government agencies, and you're kind of representing all of them now. Is that right?
That's right. So I came in to help out with business development on the defense side. And then we started to get more strategically involved. And so we realized that we need someone to engage, like you said, these bigger entities, Capitol Hill, State Department, federal law enforcement, even NATO now, overseas. And so they essentially created this role called Vice President of Government Affairs. And that's the role that I'm filling now. But it's making sure there's enough appropriations for defense budgeting. Make sure that I just came back from a European trip, talking about how with Russia coming and over into Europe, we need to make sure we have a combined front with our interoperability with guns and ammunition and everything. So we're trying to make sure they get the newest guns that are being built by SIG for the U.S. military. And so it's a little bit of everything, which is great. I mean, no one day is the same. And so, I'm shooting in the morning, then I'm doing, events at nighttime. It's like a James Bond life,
Really?
but it's got a purpose to it,
Yeah.
So it's just, and unlike the military, you're going to get promoted every 2 years and everything, but in the business world, especially at SIG, they recognize people, they're promoting them, and making sure that the best person is in that role. And so it just really worked out. And I think a lot of it is based on my Capitol Hill experience, working at the Pentagon. So that fellowship has really positioned me now to help out the warfighter, but also help out SIG as well. It's all symbiote, with that role.
Well, when you're talking about pistol range in the morning, champagne and black ties affairs at night, man, it does sound like James Bond. But just tell me, Bobby, that they gave you like a 10% commission on some of those contracts. Tell me that they gave you like $500 million on that contract, that you, some of those big contracts that you helped negotiate.
Well, I wish they did. I mean, I would be in a different spot now. But like I said, it's like the military. They do give us bonuses, which is good. But our CEO he's like a Ranger Regiment commander. He's like, we won the pistol competition. We popped some champagne. He's like, great guys,
now
well
it's
done.
Time to move
on to the next mission.
thing. Yeah, absolutely.
Now it's time. So, yeah.
Well, now at this point, the listener is starting to catch a consistent theme here. You were in the Army and your career took off like a rocket. You go to SIG, your career takes off like a rocket. I want to go now to your first campaign for the U.S. or for the congressional seat in the South Carolina Legislature. I don't know if you remember this, but I sent you a text message and said, Bobby, if I lived in South Carolina in your district, I would vote for you. And it's because I know you as a man and a father and a warrior and a follower of Jesus as much as a leader and a patriot. So I know it must have been at least a little bit scary when you try to run that first campaign for the 21st district in South Carolina. What did that feel like?
So after leaving the Capitol Hill assignment, I really got the political bug because I knew that, I could do a good job in that role, with the experience I've got in the leadership. And so I was really focused on the federal level for a while. But then once I moved back to South Carolina, I started getting involved in the community. A lot of us are, we're kind of focused on the federal level, but so much happens on the city, county, state level that are immediate impacts to families. And Capitol Hill is very gridlocked right now. They don't get a lot done. It's a very important role, but they just don't get a lot done. Where down in the county and the state level, they're making votes and making decisions that are immediately affecting their constituents. And so Josh and I were talking about it, and I really felt the burden of like, hey, I have the flexibility with SIG, with my role, the experience in the Army, and the credibility of, like you said, the assignments I've done to bring that and really make an impact now for our community. And so it was really focused on the state level, and it was nerve-wracking because coming back as an Army Ranger to my community, it was like, okay, I have immediate respect, but I'm going to put myself out there potentially to get beat in an election, and that would lose the credibility there. So there was, I prayed about it. I examined it like any operation. I said, I can do this. Like, I can win this, if I just put the effort and time into it. And so I don't know if you probably saw the typical way that I announced the assignment was, I'm like,
tell everybody how you made the announcement, because I think it was perfect.
It's perfect. So being an Airborne Ranger, and I was like, you know what? I'm going to skydive and jump into my
politics. Heck yeah.
Skydive. Yeah. Use the dad joke, then I'm jumping into politics, And so on Veterans Day, I assembled all these people, didn't tell them what I was going to do, and skydived with this local retired Special Forces team. So we had multiple, skydivers coming in and landed, and it just resonated. I mean, it was just, I'm like, hey, I'm going to bring bold leadership to our state. That we can't have the same old type of politicians serving us. So let me bring my experience and make a difference here. And the voters gave confidence in me. I ended up beating an incumbent 63%.
Wow.
And so immediately rolled in with immediate credibility of winning with a landslide, and then hit the ground running in the State House, and I just have not looked back. And it's just been good. And I tell you, like I said, I jumped in on Veterans Day, and I dedicated my campaign to veterans and their families, because I'm like, I'm only here because of all the people that served with me, and if the NCOs, the officers, they took time to develop me, and the families, like my family and veterans families. So I'm like, so this is what I'm dedicating my campaign to, and so it really resonated with people. It really did.
I hope the listeners getting this mental image of you skydiving into the political arena. Just a couple of months ago, I had a chance to interview a friend of mine, U.S. Congressman Barry Loudermilk. I love the guy.
Oh, yeah.
I've only known Barry since he's been in the political arena, both in the Georgia legislature and now at Capitol Hill. So all I've known is Barry in politics. But I've had the privilege of getting to know you since you almost started your career in the Army. And one of the reasons why I sent that message to you when you first got serious about this congressional seat in the South Carolina Legislature is because I know the kind of man that you are. You made a statement, in fact, right before we started recording this, about why it's important to serve in your state and in your community. And there are a lot of people, let's be honest, that enter politics because of the ego or because of the attention that it brings to them. But you're not that way, man. So what was your real goal in serving in the in entering into the political arena and putting yourself out there for intense scrutiny, even at the state level?
Yeah, it's a lot, and anytime you put your name on a ballot, you're raising your profile for, like you said, that criticism that, you're not going to make everybody happy. So I go, but when we moved back, we made this decision to continue to serve. We want to continue to give back to a community that's done so much for us. And we really felt the burden. We had the opportunity, the resources, the time to do it. And I told Jocelyn, and she was just ready to have a quiet life, to move back here,
and
set up roots.
You absolutely ruined any chance of that, right?
And I just told her, and we were sitting in my office here discussing it. I said, hey, if I don't do this, I'm going to regret it. And we need people with the experience that we have to make an impact. And so I just felt the burden. And she realized that, we have to give back. And I'm really doing it for my kids because, my daughter's going to be 14 this weekend. My son's 10. And they have known nothing but service about our time in the Army and then the time serving our state. And so that is like why I went to the Army, seeing all my family members serving. it's a legacy that'll be passed on to them to inspire where, they just don't take things for granted. They have to give back and they have to serve. And so it's another extenuating opportunity. It's another season of service, the way I look at it, where, like you said, a lot of people stay in office forever because it's their identity.
Yeah.
Where I look at it, where this is a phase that I have the opportunity, the experience, and the resources to do it. It's just another phase of service and a stage of life where I'm going to give as much as I can, and then I'll go serve somewhere else, either higher levels or not at all, or, going back to just focus on the community and church. And so, and God has rewarded that. I've been very successful in the State House with the bills we've passed. And that's all because of the experience in the Army and my family being able to support me in doing that.
You're describing right now countless conversations that I've had at the dinner table with our family when they were young. And I said the same thing to them. Guys, we've been privileged to live in this country. What an incredible blessing that most of the rest of the world over human history will never even be able to grasp. And do something. Doesn't have to be the military, doesn't have to be politics, but do something to give back to a society that has given so much to you. Find a way to serve. And I'm very proud of our children. All of them have found a way to serve and to make a difference. But for the last 15 years, Bobby, I have been telling people, friends of mine like you, I've been challenging them to do the exact same thing that you've done. I actually started doing this literally about 15 years ago. We were right in the middle at the apex of the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. And some of those mid-level officers that I had the privilege of working with, that you worked with, I noticed these guys and gals are so smart, so talented, so competent, and they have given so much of themselves. They really need to be running the states of the United States, or they need to be running the government of the United States. And I started challenging them. Would you guys please, when you take the uniform off, would you guys and gals please run for office? And if I am able to, I will vote for you, because I've seen the kind of character that you have, the kind of people that you are, not what you've been able to accomplish. And Bobby, when I sent that message to you, man, I meant every word of it. Like, I am very, very proud that you continue to serve and make life better for the people of the state of South Carolina by what you're doing now.
It's been an honor to, I tell people serving in the State House has been a great honor. Almost, besides leading men and women into combat, it's been one of the greatest honors I've had. And it's just a season of service where it's, I may not do it forever, but while I'm here, I'm going to make as much effort and contributions that I can. And it's been working out. It's been taking those Army values and the Ranger Creed and carrying them over into the State House and getting some good stuff done that's really needed to get done. And it's been a good run.
I was just thinking some of those words as you were talking. You are truly given 100% and then some to every job that you've ever done at SIG, in the Army, and now in the South Carolina House. You mentioned just a second ago, I'm just going to put you on the spot, man. People are saying this guy's Army career took off like a rocket. His career at SIG took off like a rocket. Now he's in politics. Is that going to take off like a rocket too? So what's next for you, man? What do you hope is on the horizon for you?
Yeah, well, just like previously, a lot of guys have like a 5-10 year plan when it comes to politics, or like, oh, I'm going to be governor by this time, or senator. But I've always approached the aspect of political service like an Army job. So like, if you keep working on higher levels, make as much impact as you can. I'm ready to serve on higher levels if the opportunity presents itself, because I can make more of a bigger impact, on that. And so, we'll see about what comes up available. I'm always done it where I'm going to knock it out of the park with the position that I'm in now.
Absolutely.
So keep doing that. And then if the opportunity comes available, always be ready to seize the moment, to, impact as much as I can. So I would welcome serving on higher levels of office if the opportunity was there, because you can just make more of a larger impact, So it's
I'm just going to shamelessly tell all of the listeners from South Carolina, you just heard it from him directly. You need to really just get behind any, whatever the next level is for Congressman
yeah.
Cox. Because man, I have been so impressed by everything that I've seen you do over the years, from time on the active component to serving at SIG, and all of the impact that you're making in the big government agencies to what you're doing right now at the state. And I personally, selfishly hope that you get the chance to serve at the national level and at the highest levels one day, because I think that much of you, man. It is this conversation with you. First of all, just catching up with an old friend is something that I've been looking forward to. But just being able to say a couple of things to you that I haven't had a chance to say to you since we last served in the Army together, man, this is something that I've been looking forward to for some time.
Me as well. I mean, like I said before, when one of your heroes asks you to come onto a podcast, you got to do it, And so we just, even though we haven't talked in years, I've always considered you a close friend and a mentor. And so just hearing that opinion of me from you means a lot. I mean, it motivates me, and it challenges me too, to still, continue to give that 110% and then some,
Well,
so, but thank you. Thank you for that.
Tuck this away in the back of your mind, whatever political office you're looking for next. If I can do something to stand by your side, or to just let everybody who has the chance to vote for you know what I think about you, I'm down for it, just because of my respect for you, man.
Yeah. Thanks, Jeff. I appreciate it.
And thank you for taking a little bit of your time, this extremely busy schedule that you have with home and SIG and politics and the Army Reserves. Thank you for carving out an hour of that insane schedule to be with me on this podcast, man.
No, it's my honor. Anytime you need me as well, I'm there. So thank you, Jeff.
Bobby's simple one piece of advice. Everyone can do that. And I'm convinced that if you will follow that one piece of advice, you will be successful, no matter what line of work you're in. Here's the advice again. Just be a good dude. Just be a good gal. Take care of your people. Give it everything that you've got. Do your best and be a good person. And chances are, somebody's going to notice along the way. Yeah, there's going to be some ups and there'll probably be some downs, but over the long term, maybe you will be as successful as my friend Bobby Cox and his wife Jocelyn have been over the years. Thank you, Bobby, for reminding us how simple the advice is. It's simple to understand, but really hard to do sometimes. I want to thank everybody for tuning in to this episode. I hope you really, really enjoyed it, my conversation with my old friend. But if you are catching this broadcast for the first time, like if you just stumbled across this podcast, why don't you go ahead and subscribe? You can follow us on all of the prominent podcast platforms, or you can always just subscribe and follow us on YouTube. We do the video version of this podcast there. But I want you to know we also have a very large, very engaged social media audience. There's some amazing people that are connected on all of our social media channels. If you're looking for us on social media, just search for @UnbeatablePodcast. And one of the people that you're going to find while you're there is our fan of the week this week, a guy by the name of Nick Kilday. Nick, I just wanted to point you out and tell you how awesome you are. I wanted the rest of the Unbeatable audience to know how awesome you are. And I also just want to let you know, the whole audience know, about our Unbeatable Army email list. These are the people that I send content to, not just about guests, but about stuff that's going on in the Unbeatable world. And if you want to become part of the Unbeatable Army, it's totally free. Just sign up by going to unbeatablearmy.com. I'm going to stop talking now so that you can go through the rest of your week and follow this simple piece of advice from Congressman Cox. Go be a good dude. Go be a good gal. And things, hopefully, will start to take care of themselves, and you will be unbeatable too. See you next time.